Welcome back to This or That. We have a special guest. We have Ben here, and we're just going to ask him a couple questions. He's a trainer.
Certified Goata Trainer.
Yeah, so we're going to ask him a couple questions. So if you're interested in the training, doctor-y side of basketball and why injuries are happening at the rate they are, and for certain players that are getting injured, this is your guy to talk to, and we figured we'd bring him on, see what he has to say. And obviously we have a couple questions, but you just want to explain a little bit about what you do and why you started posting it to TikTok.
Yeah, so I'm a certified Goata trainer. I started training Goata about 3 years ago. Got my certification about 3 months ago, so I just started. But pretty much what Goata training is that we find there's a common theme in the most durable athletes of all time and the least durable athletes of all time, and they all display the same movement patterns as one another. So what we do at Goata is pretty much get our athletes to train to move the same way as the most durable athletes of all time.
That's just interesting. Like is it easy for you to like recognize these patterns like in like even a high school athlete or something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, everybody has a different movement pattern, but like I said before, there's just common themes. So what we find is the people, especially that have non-contact injuries, they usually like to cut off the inside edge of their foot, so their inside ankle bone is low. Everything we do at Goata, we're training inside ankle bone high, so we're making sure to keep pressure on the balls of the foot and stay on that outside edge.
So is that why people get ankle sprains? Like high ankle sprains? Is that like a reason that they're not doing the Goata training? Is like high ankle sprain one of them?
Yeah, high ankle sprain is part of it. It's more so like non-contacts. Like a lot of times, like a high ankle sprain, there's like contact that goes along with it. But mainly it's when we see that inside ankle bone drop, that's when we see problems. And like I said, there's common themes in like the least durable athletes of all time. So like Anthony Davis, Zion Williamson, LaMelo is on his way. There's Kadarius Toney. He's probably the best example. They all move in this same pattern that leads to more and more injuries. And the training industry right now, they really haven't been taking a look at movement. We're just trying to put on as much muscle as possible. And that's not the best way to approach it.
I know you started pretty recently, but does it seem like it's obtainable to implement these practices at a young age and it could really affect like somebody's potential career or someone's potential durability, like implementing that kind of thing and never really shying away from it?
Yeah, 100%. So we have kids that are in the lab right now. They're like 11, 12 years old. So they're working on strengthening their movement patterns. But what we actually find is that younger kids, generally, they naturally move pretty well. But the problem is the more that people get older, the more training that they do, the more they're just resting in poor posture, resting on chairs, wearing shoes, the more their movement patterns continuously get worse. So the key for younger kids is that we're trying to keep their movement patterns the same. We want to make sure that they don't develop bad habits like a lot of these older athletes have.
100%. And would you say that that's due to like a lot of athletes starting to put on weight, lift heavier to accommodate to their sports, and then not being able to have that knowledge of positioning and how important it is?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a huge part of it. So I think the best example that I could use, do you guys know what a clean is?
Mm-hmm.
Like in the weight room, you guys know what a clean is?
Oh, yeah, like a power.
Yeah. With a clean, that's a big thing. When you snatch the bar up and you land on the inside edge of your foot and your knees kind of just naturally cave in. We're being told like that's okay, like there's nothing wrong with that. But the problem is we're inputting into our central nervous system. When we want to generate maximum force, we're going to cut off the inside edge of our foot. So the problem is we do behaviors like that in the weight room, and subconsciously when we start cutting on a field or moving around on a court, we start cutting the wrong way. And the weight room is a huge part of the reason why that's happening.
That's hella interesting. Because it makes so much sense visually, like as you're explaining it, I'm trying to like picture it in my head.
Well, for me, my knees, like when I stand or like when I bend down, my knees don't bend straight. They bend forward. So obviously it's not good. I mean, I don't work out a ton or.
Are you duck-footed or pigeon-toed?
Nah.
Playing got the Kenny the Jet Smith.
Point out or point in?
Out.
It's usually one or the other. Yeah, so the people that have feet that point out, they usually typically have worse movement patterns because every time they take a step, they're naturally planting with their heel. And when you plant with your heel, that's when that inside ankle bone drops.
Yeah, because I have like me and Finn's family have like notoriously bad knees. Like, for our whole family. And so like my knees have always, like even in middle school basketball, like they've hurt, or high school.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm sure movement patterns are part of it, but there's also still like a lot of moving factors. Yeah. But movement patterns are a big piece of that equation for sure.
Yeah. Is there something like is there players now, like not the ones that you've mentioned, but like younger guys that you've seen? Like, because I know there's like, for me, obviously being a Cavs fan, like Evan Mobley's very like skinny, and so like he's progressively been putting on more weight, and like is obviously you said that weight room and like doing cleans and stuff like that affects it, but if as long as you're still working out and putting on muscle, is there a way to not get the
like the negative aspect of it?
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. So I mean, we still have like upper body lifts at Goata. The thing is, it's not like bodybuilding stuff. So in terms of like putting on muscle mass, like that's not our specialty. Like we're working on like fixing movement patterns. And like I said, in my personal opinion, it's a piece of the equation. So like guys could still lift, they can still get bigger and get stronger, but they just have to make sure to incorporate some of our stuff too, so they don't experience those negative effects of them working out. Like a guy like Evan Mobley, he's really skinny right now. He would benefit a lot from putting on strength. So he should definitely do that. But he just has to keep an eye on his movement patterns and make sure he incorporates some of our stuff so he doesn't have more problems down the road.
What got you interested into like moving into a field like this? Like, did you want to do it during school, or like did you play sports and found you had a trainer that acted like this and you were interested in it? Like, what kind of got you down the rabbit hole?
So I've been an athlete pretty much my whole life. I've done speed training with Parisi and velocity pretty much from the time I was in like 8th grade all the way up into college. I played college basketball and college football. So at Misericordia University, I played basketball there for 3 years, and I played football for 1 year. And when I was doing all the speed training stuff, like initially I was getting like really good results. Like my numbers were really going up. Like I was starting to make like our leaderboard list, stuff like that. And then what I found was the more I got into it, it was probably like around year 3. So like, let's say this is the progression bar, this is the injury bar. At first I was progressing like this. And then as the years went on, I kind of stopped progressing and the injury bar went like this. And eventually it overlapped. So the injuries kind of started to like overtake the progress that I was making. And that's when I kind of just sat back and wanted to like reanalyze everything. I was like, something's missing here. Like there's no way that I should be going backwards after doing this shit for 3 years. Like there's something that they're not aware of. Like I shouldn't be experiencing the day-to-day pain that I was experiencing. So one of my best friends at school, he was on the basketball team too. He would always tell me about Goata training, and he had been training it for 3 years at this point. So he'd been well into it. He had to have been one of the first kids like actually training Goata because it was like brand new at that time. And he would kind of like spoon feed it to me every day. And like, I understood what he was saying, but so much of what he was saying was like contradictory to what I had been taught my entire life. So I was like there's no way. Like I get the point you're making, but like that's not really my thing. And then the more he showed me it, the more I started to realize like, all right, like this shit really makes sense. And like what did it for me is he kind of broke down the film and showed me how every single ACL tear is the exact same behavior. And when I saw that, I was like, you can definitely train to counter that. Like you're onto something. So long story short, started training with my friend Mike. After about 3 weeks, I pretty much felt immediately that it was unlike any type of training that I ever experienced. And I've been rolling with it since.
That's great. Do you think, and I know that you made a video on Lonzo, and then like that's really what caught my attention, is just because like being like in the media, and then like I see now that you are a part of the media, you know, posting on all different platforms. But I had never came across anybody who talks about that particular aspect of training. You know, I hear a lot of people talk about, oh, you just need to get stronger, you know, but for you to talk about how important positioning is in regards to how, you know, important force is when you're putting that amount of force and energy on like your ankles and stuff like that. Like,
right.
Do you think that Lonzo, a lot of people are saying like Lonzo isn't going to be able to recover. Do you think that if Lonzo started to, you know, have some people in his corner that are training him to practice these positions to become a part of his subconscious again, like you said, he played well in UCLA, but like once he got to the league, they started to, you know, do this, train him in ways that they only know how. Do you think that his injury and condition is reversible?
100%. Because what I broke down in the Lonzo video is he comes from a past of naturally having pretty good movement patterns. And he kind of fucked that up when he did all the training. So I think with Lonzo, it's a matter of finding the right trainer. I also don't have faith that he's going to do that though, because everything right now, like the big popular thing is like plyometrics. Like everybody just wants to like get their vertical up. They're not worried about like taking care of your body. Like everyone's so worried about like making gains to keep up with like the athletic ability of everybody in the NBA. But like the best ability is availability. So like at some point down the road, people just got to start worrying about taking care of their bodies. And like especially for a sport like basketball in the NBA, especially, like you're playing 82 fucking games. Like I don't know if there's one dude in the league that's playing more than 70 right now because they feel like they just have to manage the load. And like that load management wouldn't be as important if they were just training the right way or just not training the wrong way. So, I mean, I don't think it's too late for Lonzo. He can turn it around, but he has to find the right trainer.
Yeah. And then earlier you mentioned Zion. And so you said that he has the bad movement patterns. Do you think that's more attributed to his movement patterns or his weight? Like, do you think he could be sustainable at that weight that he's currently at? Say it's 285 pounds at 6'7"?
Big boy, bro.
Or do you think it's more of the movement?
It's definitely more the movement, but the weight doesn't help. So, like, the best example I like to use for a guy like him is Shaq. Shaq had great movement patterns. Big motherfucker, 7 feet. I don't even know how many pounds. And, like, he never really struggled with injuries throughout his career because, like, he naturally moved pretty well. And, like, Zion, his problem right now is that he's just duck-footed. Like, he'd be slamming his heels into the ground, inside ankle bone drops, like, all stuff that's, like, fixable. So it's like if he slimmed down, there would be less of a toll like on the muscles and on the joints, but the weight isn't the problem. It's the movement patterns. So they kind of go hand in hand. Like less weight might help him out a little bit, but it's more important to fix his movement.
Yeah, because like a guy like Ja Morant, everyone's real thing with him and Zion too, but was like coming out, they were like, he just jumps so high, he's going to get hurt. But I think you've said he has a good movement pattern, Ja.
He does. And what we've actually noticed with Ja is if you look at his film for Murray State compared to now, it's starting to take a little bit of a turn, and he still has pretty good movement patterns in general. You could see that effect start to take place. Like you could see like his inside ankle bone starts to drop a little bit, like his foot's starting to go a little bit crooked. Like so you could see they're starting to undo some of the good movement patterns that he already had. And us guys at Goata are a little worried about it. I know the guys at GLS have been in his DMs trying to like work with him, shit like that. But as of right now, he does have good movement patterns. So
the one thing that I was mainly curious about that, like once we figured out we were going to do this, I was super hyped to ask you is it really hard to reprogram, especially as a pro athlete, bro, who spends so much time in the weight room or putting up shots or like running drills and when you said earlier, like just running a drill as hard as you can to either look good for the coach or like do well, like in front of the team or whatever. And you're not even worried about your body. Like you're just trying to get the ball in the hoop. Like I could totally see that. Is it hard to reprogram the brain after like so many reps, or are there ways that you can kind of trick yourself into starting to ease yourself into it?
Well, you hit the nail on the head with it's just the amount of reps that you've done. So a lot of people, it's really difficult to undo. So, I mean, if you take an NBA veteran who's been moving the exact same way in the NBA for 10 straight seasons, it's going to be really hard to fix his movement patterns. It might be like 2-year, 3-year plan before he starts like moving the way he should. Like you take a younger guy. I'll actually use myself as an example because I had good movement patterns naturally growing up. I did all the speed training shit, which basically undid my movement patterns. And then when I started doing Goata, I was able to recode pretty quick. So I was able to fix my movement patterns without much of a problem because I hadn't really done enough training in between where it was like that hard to manipulate, you know? So these guys in the NBA, like if they're 30, pushing 40 years old, it's going to be really hard to undo. But the younger guys, those are the guys we should be targeting. And especially because everything we do is durability. So not only are their movement patterns easier to fix, but we also want to see those guys play well into their 30s.
Yeah.
Dope, dude. That was my main thing. I was because especially like when you said, oh shit, there you go. Especially when you said like the drills thing, like I just said, that was so interesting for me to think about visually, like just pushing yourself to that moment of exhaustion where it's like you even leave that workout like, oh yeah, it worked. Like I put that shit in, but you might have even done negative work in the long run. That's just so interesting to think about.
You provided negative inputs to your central nervous system. And like, so skill training, that's a big part of it too, because that's become a really common thing over the years, especially like since COVID, like in the football world, especially like everybody just started doing so much skills training with trainers that don't really like understand biomechanics. And a lot of the stuff that we're teaching, whether it's like basketball or football, like we're teaching to do things that are going to encourage bad movement patterns down the road, and we have no idea that we're doing it. It's basically something that they've seen on TV, and they're like, oh, Kadarius Toney does that, so this shit has to work. Like, no, it doesn't work like that. Like, if you understand biomechanics, you understand how the body moves, you shouldn't be training certain ways. But the problem is trainers just aren't aware of it right now.
Yeah, like I know obviously we're NBA podcast, but I'm an NFL fan. So is there because obviously there's a lot of guys that kind of not like move like
Here
Kadarius,
comes Matty Footballs.
but like I'm thinking of a guy like that's quick and shifty, like a Tyreek Hill or an Odell or someone like that. Like are there other people like that in the NFL that you've seen good movement patterns in that are that quick, shifty kind of guy, like either past or present? But is there anyone like that?
Yeah, so the best mover in terms of wide receiver is definitely DeAndre Hopkins. So watch him, and that shows in his game too. Like he's had injuries from time to time, but there's always been like contact related to it. But his actual movement patterns are very strong. So for wide receivers, he's the guy to watch. Tyreek Hill is pretty good. He has some minor flaws. He doesn't really corner like how we call it. A corner is when like the heel flicks away like off of like the explosion. He's got to work on that a little bit. Little things need to be cleaned up with him. And then, like I've already said a million times, not trying to pick on Kadarius Toney, he's a beast, but like his moving patterns are fucking terrible.
Yeah, and he's also had he's had some major injuries for sure, like already, and he's still so young.
Right, and then I could also think one of the best examples I like to use is Calvin Johnson, because Calvin Johnson had to retire early from chronic pain. Like he literally said the reason why he was retiring was pain, and no one really looked into that enough. And like if you look at his movement patterns, everyone assumed it was just because like he was taking a lot of bad hits. But it wasn't like that. It was like all the pain that he was experiencing from like non-contact stuff, like digging your heels into the ground, like negative bows, knees caving in, like all that stuff. So, yeah, I mean, it's all tied together. Randy Moss is another great example of someone who moves very well. And how many years he played at a high level definitely shows that. And he didn't really have any injuries either. So he was another.
You guys got any more questions before I got a good wrap-up question?
No. I think I want to say that like I'm always looking for ways for me to implement better ways for me to execute on the court and also stay healthy. So I've found your videos like very, very educating, and I feel like I have like a boxing background, so we learn to bounce on the balls of our feet, you know, in order to implement that force, and it's all about footwork. And I'm not sure if you're a boxing cat or you deal with anybody who is in boxing, but do you think maybe that's why we don't see as many ACL injuries or anything like that due to them having the footwork and the positioning of being able to, you know, just do what they do?
100%. And if you look at boxing, you tell me what's like the basic cardio thing that you do with a rope?
Jump rope
in all the time. And everything that you do, you're providing inputs in your central nervous system. You're just bouncing off the balls of your feet for however long. And like something as simple like that is going to go such a long way with your movement patterns. And the other thing with like boxing specifically, like when you throw a punch, your back heel naturally flicks away, which is what we call a corner. So that's another thing that just kind of naturally encourages like a good movement pattern. And the other thing with boxing too is you really have to know how to like shift your weight.
Yeah.
So like if you're throwing a punch with your right hand, you're really shifting from the left side to the right side.
Yeah.
Like a lot of athletes don't know how to effectively transfer their weight like that, which fucks up their movement patterns. So yeah, that's definitely a reason why the boxing world hasn't really had to deal with injuries like that.
100%.
You're obviously doing your job. You're out here right now spreading the word, but like, how are we going to get this out? It just, when you hear you talk about it or you watch the videos, and like I said, you visualize it in your head, like it just makes so much sense. So what are steps that you guys are taking? Because it's more of a new form of training. I know everybody's hype on plyo, everybody's hype on like dunks and shit and like doing like knee stretches and shit, but like what's the way that you guys are planning to kind of try and get this out?
So I mean, it's going to take time, but the main guys that run Goata, the guys at GLS, they're headquartered in New Orleans, and they're actually working with 3 or 4 Saints players right now. You guys know Juwan Johnson, the tight end. He's training Goata. He's actually been training Goata for 3 years now.
Wow.
Also, side note, take a look at Juwan Johnson. From the time he's come into the league, I don't think he's missed a game. And I think the only injury he had was like a minor ankle thing like his rookie year. Like it's not a coincidence. Like he's probably the first example in the NFL of someone who's been training Goata for his whole career and he's stayed perfectly healthy, and he's actually like gotten on the field and gotten playing time too.
He's gotten better for sure.
He has, and you could see it, and like you could see it's not just like he's remaining durable, like he's getting more athletic too.
That's
like a huge thing with us at Goata is like so many athletes, especially professional athletes, like the reason why they're not as athletic is strictly because of the pain. You take out that pain, and then the effect of it is you're just naturally more athletic. Like we might not be doing plyos, we might not be doing a lot of explosive movements, but just getting out of that pain is going to make you more athletic. So yeah, we're training guys like Juwan Johnson. We're training Jameis Winston too. There, Darius Smith, from the Jaguars, the linebacker. He just started training with GLS. I don't know exactly what program he's on. He's in Jacksonville. He's done a few sessions with them. So yeah, I mean the thing right now is just the main guys at GLS that are kind of running the whole program. We're just trying to get as many pro athletes as we can, and then I don't want to say use them as a marketing tool, but the more pro athletes we get to buy into what we're saying, the more everybody else will start buying what we're saying.
Yeah, because, I mean that's proof that's just results. Like
exactly.
Check out this dude is at the top of his field. This is the 0.5 of 1% in the world. He's doing our training and he's getting better and not getting hurt.
Exactly.
That's
the best way to get the word out there. Just get the pros.
For sure. Thanks for coming on. Links will all be in the description. And yeah, peace, guys.